system is called the transponder. Nobody had proved it, and we recently proved it that it was clearly manually switched off. Right?
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our audience from around the globe. This is your host, Sid, and welcome back to another episode with Sit Down with Sid podcast, where we bring people together around the world, one conversation at a time. Joining us today is Jean-Luc Marchand, a veteran of air traffic management with decades of experience at the highest levels of European aviation. As a former senior executive at Eurocontrol, Jean-Luc's rigorous analysis of the MH370 trajectory has become the gold standard for the modern investigation. But today, his work is more than just a theory. It's a roadmap. As we speak, the Ocean Infinity's 2026 search is underway in the southern Indian Ocean, with search vessels recently spotted performing unusual maneuvers right on the edge of Jean-Luc's specific target zone. The world is holding its breath. Jean-Luc, your technical precision has helped define this new search area, and it is a true honor to have you here at such a pivotal moment. Thanks so much for joining us, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. And hi to everybody listening and watching.
Perfect. Okay, let's get into it. Can you tell our audience a bit about your professional background in aviation and satellite systems, and what initially drew you to investigate MH370 independently?
My background started in industry, in digital signal processing, and then I went to the European agency to do research on synthetic aperture radar systems. Then I went to Eurocontrol, the European Commission, and later to the joint undertaking called CESAR, which is a joint undertaking with Eurocontrol, the Commission, and industry. On air traffic control management research. So to define and help defining the future system for the air traffic control. Why I joined or I studied the MH370 is first because of my air traffic control background, but also because of first friends who talked me and interrogated me and I had no answers. And finally, it's mainly for the families to help them finding the wreckage and to help them to, let's say, to close this sad episode of their life.
It indeed is a very sad and tragic thing that happened. And once again, we can all wish for closure of these family members, With that being said, you have collaborated closely with retired Air France Captain Patrick Blely for years. How did your partnership begin, and what unique perspective do each of you bring? The engineer's view on data versus the pilot's operational insight?
Well, actually, I started studying MH370 in another group, which had finished when I decided to contact Patrick, that I knew was working on its own for 4 long years in parallel. Both of us worked on different hypotheses. When I finished working with the first group, I decided to contact him on a few technical issues that we had discussed in parallel together. And finally, we decided to join together basically in 2021. We are complementing each other very well. He's the operational guy, the aeronautical guy, being a pilot because he flew on B747 and Airbus 330. So he has a long experience of large aircraft and their systems. He has also experience of the use of the systems, their behavior in flight. On my side, I am more in a technical side, bringing understanding of the radar data on the telecom, on, let's say, the satellites, on defining precisely what is a trajectory according to the signal and the information we have. So, being that team, we complemented each other. And on our way, we have been joined by two other people, which are less visible to a certain extent. One, which is a specialist in analysis of structure, of elastic structure, which, and we'll discuss that a little bit later on the deformation of the debris. And another one who joined us for data mining, algorithm defining, and number crunching. And the guy is very good to help us, and we'll see that a little bit later. So basically, we are 2 plus 2.
Perfect, perfect. And regarding the MH370, you have highlighted that it disappeared exactly during a handover between air traffic control zones. My question to you is, why is this specific timing so critical to your theory that this was a deliberate act rather than an accident or an uncontrolled event?
I will see a little bit different that critical, because actually it's in the point of view of somebody who wants to deroute an aircraft and not being detected, it is the perfect location. It is just at the border between two controlled airspace, one by Kuala Lumpur, but it was delegated, it still is delegated by Singapore. So, it's even a strange location already for Kuala Lumpur. It's an extension of their airspace. And then before entering to the Vietnamese airspace, there is, as you said, an handover. And this handover is where the control on the ground is delegated, the control of the aircraft to the air. So the pilot is responsible on its own to contact the next controller. And so, to a certain extent, the ground is in a passive mode, is in a standby mode until the aircraft declares himself entering the new zone, right? So it's a very good location because the controller in Vietnam was waiting, and it took a long time for him to a little bit say, wake up. Normally it should take 1 or 2 minutes at most. And here it took 17 minutes. So you see that during 17 minutes, the aircraft could do a lot. So it was at night, it was calm, and this location is really peculiar. So that's why it's a very good location. And at the same time, for Kuala Lumpur controller, the aircraft was going northeast, right? And it gave the impression it was going northeast, while actually it made a U-turn, 180 degree back. So when an aircraft is lost, the search and rescue procedure is to look along his flight path, the filed one, which has been given before departure. So as there was no element, the ground and the search and rescue were guiding the research to the path of the aircraft towards Beijing, so in the Chinese Sea, while the aircraft had turned long time ago. So you see, it's a very clever way of derouting the aircraft and misleading the search and rescue. So that's why this place is really, really, let's say, a good choice.
Wow. So the search and rescue team does not follow the path where they made a 180 U-turn. They are still following the path of northeast going from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing.
Absolutely. At that time, until the military minister of the army made a press conference the following day, until that time, the search and rescue was in the Chinese Sea because nobody had any clue, because no emergency, and that's a very good, interesting point. No emergency was declared by the aircraft. And because of that, there is no reason to believe that it made things differently than following its path. Normally, when there is nothing said, the aircraft is supposed to have just a communication problem, maybe a system failure in communication, but that's it. And what does the control? It says to the other aircraft, okay, we will give you a different vector, so you will clear the tunnel for this particular aircraft, which is obviously having a problem, and we will clear the path. So the logical choice and the procedure is to look along the path. So they stayed basically long hours looking in the Chinese Sea until the ministry said, we may have a clue that it went back to Malaysia in the Malacca Straits. But that's normal, you know, because, and then we will see that a little bit later when we will discuss the invisibility. So I won't go there. But what is clear is that at this stage, what happened is that the aircraft disappeared. It means that from the screens of the controller or on the screens, there was no blip anymore, and suddenly it vanished. Why? Because the different systems were switched off, and only primary radar stayed. But these targets, these echoes, are not processed real time by the military. So it took them time to recover these echoes and see that they were having a meaning segment by segment of tracks.
Wow. I mean, two things that stand out to me, as you said, is the no emergency call and the 17-minute gap. That really sticks out. So that's a long gap for anyone to contact the air traffic control.
It is. Normally it's 1 minute and less than 1 minute. But here the controller had no sign, so he had to react, but he reacted late. And the discussion between the Malaysian and the Vietnamese took several hours before they realized that the aircraft was missing, because they made a slight mistake in contacting the center of operation of the Malaysian company, of Malaysia Airlines. And their system at Malaysians had a system which has a memory of 30 minutes. So they were having information which was 30 minutes old. And they said to the controller, no, sorry, our system is telling us it is on the China Sea. But it was an old information, and they were reacting live on a past information, which was not true anymore. So there was an added confusion on a tripartite discussion, which should not have occurred. Only the two controllers should have said, we have a missing aircraft, we should trigger the first phase on search and rescue. Okay. Now, this is, as in your question, you said deliberate act, an accident or an uncontrolled event. Several elements. Recently, we analyzed deeply and in more detail than everybody did before, much more, the air traffic control data, the civilian air traffic control data, and we extracted a lot of information. So I invite your viewers to look at our video, which explained the first hour of the flight, very educative and very clear. But from this data, we could clearly see that the transponder, which is a system that responds to the secondary radar interrogations and which broadcasts the ADS-B surveillance data that you use when you use flight data, flight radar data, flight aware 24. This information is coming from this system on board, and also which is used by the aircraft to avoid collisions. This system is a discussion between the two aircraft saying, you climb, I descend, or vice versa, depending. So this system is called the transponder, and it passes messages outside and receives messages. And this system has been switched off manually. Until today, it was a strong assumption, but nobody had proved it. And we recently proved it, that it was clearly manually switched off. right? And because
Mm.
of that, it means that it comes from inside the cockpit. In addition to this, it was clear that from the data monitoring the status of the aircraft that we could read from this ATC data, there is no, let's say, no signal or no value showing that the column, so which is the gear, the gear, the control of the aircraft, there was no action at all. So it means that there were no fight, there were no contradicting order from the co-pilot against the pilot and vice versa. Nothing. The column, the control column was non-touched. The transponder switched off at Igari, calmly, at really a beam Igari. It means that calmly, it was switched off. So being an accident will be difficult. Uncontrolled event.
Mm-hmm.
In the data, we have shown that several aircraft were having the MH370 basically in their field of view,
Mm-hmm.
right? Would a fire, an explosion have occurred, they would have reported that immediately to the air traffic control on the ground because no aircraft would go in a direction of a fire or an explosion without requesting the control to say, where are you sending me? Should I continue? Is there a war situation? Is there a fighting situation somewhere ahead of me? So they never reported this type of incident. So it 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 at that stage, it's very
Mm-hmm.
difficult to say it's an accident or uncontrolled event. On top of that, could you imagine that an aircraft would fly 6 hours 15 minutes if it had an accident, an emergency, a problem? No, the aircraft flew calmly until the end of the fuel, and so
Mm-hmm.
it was completely in a flying uh, um, circumstances, in condition, in very good condition. So we can put aside accident, uncontrolled event, a missile also. So
Mm.
this stuff should be. And secondly, when you look at the radar data, you see that the U-turn is done with a sharp banking angle of
Mm-hmm.
35 degrees and more, which is unacceptable for the autopilot, uh, which we, which usually accept until 25 degrees. So this U-turn was very sharp to avoid entering the Thai ADIZ, so military defense zone, and
Mm-hmm.
that is only done manually. So that was performed perfectly by a pilot with a calm situation, if I may say so.
But and this video that you just mentioned for an hour, which shows the first hour, where is this available for our viewers to watch? Is it at the MS370 caption?
Indeed, if you go to the first page,
Mm-hmm.
on the first, I don't know, you are now on the page. If if you look
Yes.
at the home, if you look at the home page, you will see a paragraph, and we explain that we have got data and release data, and there is a small image, and that's the video.
Okay. You know what? If you don't mind, let me just share this so at least our audience is
Okay,
aware of it. So this is the MS370 caption.net. We
exactly.
have
And
and
the
this
first,
one.
exactly. This is the
Okay.
video.
Okay, perfect. So we have the link of this website in the description. Would you be okay if we also put the link of this specific video so people
Okay,
can actually?
very good, very good.
Perfect, perfect. So we will
Yeah,
do that. So this way, at least the audience can also understand the new audience who is watching this for the first time. Perfect. Okay.
yeah.
Now, I know you had initially brought up the Malacca straight turn, and that was my following question is, uh, you described the initial deviation as a maneuver to make the aircraft invisible after the Malacca straight turn. Would you take a moment and walk us through the sequence of events in the cockpit? To some of that we have already mentioned. uh, including how systems like transponder, especially ACARs, were likely disabled, you know.
Okay. If you allow me, I will go back because making the aircraft invisible
Hmm.
was very few minutes after Igari, which is long before reaching the Strait of Malacca, because it could not have been visible during that leg, otherwise it would have been detected. So after the U-turn, the uh, the prime suspect, let's call that the one who is actually an experienced pilot, uh,
Hmm.
did several things, but the easiest way to do it is to, let's say, making the aircraft invisible means several things. The first
Hmm.
one is ensuring that visually it's not visible anymore, so no lights, no strobes. Second is that absolutely no communication could go out of the aircraft, right? And ensuring that inside nobody could think that it's an hijacking. Otherwise, they would grab probably their phone and maybe be
Hmm.
able, even though they were too far away. But you never know. Okay? So this is what I call making invisible. The
Hmm.
easiest way, and that's Patrick's, let's say, approach. The captain, he says it's very easy. During the U-turn, you prepare yourself, and then you start depressurizing, or let's say, taking out the pressure of the cabin, and you switched off 5 buttons, 5 switches. The 5 main generators on board, cutting all electricity. And such in one go, you don't have to search for any switch you should do. No. ACAS, no. Just cut off the electricity, which means only the rat, which will deploy, is a small turbine which is deploying beneath the body of the aircraft, will give the electricity, reminding that, or let's say, keeping in mind that the engines were still running, so they will still powering hydraulically the aircraft. So the RAM would give only the minimum electricity needed, and thus basically only the flying instruments for the captain would be available, basically,
Hmm.
except some air conditioning, some stuff for the cabin to survive. But basically not much more. So it means in one go, there is no communication anymore. So as you said, the ACARS is a victim of that in the sense it's automatically stopped because there is no electricity in the computer of the aircraft in the part of the communication part. Okay, so that's our vision, and that's how we see that suddenly it disappeared after disappearing because of the transponder to avoid to see the turn. After the turn, you disable any communication and you make the
Hmm.
aircraft invisible. The only visibility you could have is because there are ancient system for navigation help, which is called VOR DMEs, for which the aircraft nonetheless emits some signal to this, let's say, system who will then respond to it. But apart from that, there will be no communication out of the aircraft, thus invisible, silent and invisible.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, yes, yes. I personally find it very intriguing and all the things that you were saying. And I had the pleasure of an honor to have Grace Nathan
Yeah.
also on the show. So, I mean, there is so many factors going on around this investigation, and it's an intriguing challenge. It's like looking at a needle in a haystack, such a big ocean. You're looking for Boeing 777. I mean, uh, I don't know. I mean, it just blows my mind away. But once again, how can a Boeing just vanish is something that most of us cannot understand. Like, how is that even possible with all the technology that we have these days, you know?
Well, at that stage, it was possible. Now, I had a friend which died close to the Titanic, so Pierre-Henri Nargelet, who told me, Jean-Luc, you're not only looking at the needle in the haystack, you are looking to find first a haystack and then a haystack in which you look for the needle. So first find the haystack.
That's actually
So
very well explained. I want to talk
yeah.
about the debris. Your work supports a long southern flight ending in a controlled ditching to minimize the debris. My question to you is, why do you favor this soft crash scenario over a high-speed death dive impact? And how does the debris like the flaperon, which was found on Reunion Island, support this narrative?
Well, so our assumptions were it was piloted until the end, and the facts are in along our assumption, even though we cannot be 100% sure, but it's most likely because an aircraft doesn't turn by itself, right? So at the end, the Patrick's hypothesis is to say, I am a pilot, and I'm not waiting the exhaust of the fuel to crash. I didn't take so much care to be invisible, untraceable, and not being detected. So I'm not going to be detected at the final moment because of a crash, which will make a wave, a sound wave, detected by microphones, possibly detected by other means of detections. So no. And in addition, not making too many debris. Because if you crash and fall like the Air France 447, you have thousands of pieces because it's like hurting a concrete wall. So it's disintegrating the aircraft. So the water is really will not give a chance. So for us, it was a ditching because there were so few debris
Hmm.
recovered. And the debris recovered were not showing impacts of a vertical crash or a falling apart crash, if I may say so. So the third man I mentioned earlier today in the interview, Argyris Kamoulakos, specialist in the elastic structure analysis, showed that actually the flaperon that was recovered in La Réunion could have been broken like a zip, no, because it was hurting the water in that manner. Okay,
Hmm.
and the water pressure would have thrown and unzipped the last bit of it. I invite you to look at some of the videos on our site, on our website, because we have made this available. And this shows that it has been, well, most likely broken. No hurting, no sign, no trace of crash of impact on the front of the flapper, which means it cannot be an hurting smash up front. Now people are saying, oh yes, but they could be retracted in the wings. Now we have analyzed the scenario, and for us the flaperon was retracted because some pieces broke, and the water was pressuring so much that not only broke the flaperon, but it broke the attachments in front, and such the flaperon went inside, and so giving some traces as if it was retracted. So that's our let's say interpretation. Now there are other elements which don't show either some evidences of a splash. Now there are so few pieces recovered that actually it goes along a ditching rather than a full crash, because otherwise we would have seen a lot of things, personal
Hmm.
belongings, floating elements. And no, we believe that the aircraft was ditching on a high wave sea, probably 3 to 3.5 meters high swell, which is not neutral. It's basically half of the body height, and it touched down by the right wing, which
Hmm.
bend it a little bit. That's why the flaperon and the outer board flap were released. And in a turning movement, it hurted the water and probably broke in 2 or 3 pieces, but large pieces.
Hmm.
So that's
Interesting.
why, we expect ocean infinity to find large pieces.
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely. I also want to talk about the ocean infinity later on. First, I want to talk about your proposed the search area of 1,200 square kilometer that you proposed. Now, it is much smaller than previous official searches like Richard Godfrey's WSPR based analysis. What makes this specific zone near 35.7 degrees south the most likely resting place compared to thousands of miles they have searched previously?
For determining the trajectory, from the final, what people call the final maneuver turn in the northwest of Sumatra, the aircraft turned basically towards the south. From there to the end point, you have not so many, let's say, trajectories. And what Patrick, the captain, said, it said, okay, let's look at the fuel. At that time, how many hours did he fly? So this is the average consumption. So let's read Boeing's table. And Boeing says in the table, with so much consumption, you are, because you are at that level and at that speed, basically. So I'm simplifying a little bit, but that's what Boeing tables are saying. So we derived from that the aircraft was at a flight level 300 and at a certain speed, which was Mach 706, which is in the holding speed. Then using that, you look at the crossing with the arcs, the famous Inmarsat pings, where Inmarsat ground satellites and the ground segment interrogated the aircraft to verify that the aircraft was still connected. And the aircraft, without saying any message, any data, was just answering, yes, I am still connected. Just saying, are you connected? Yes, I'm connected. Full stop. And this gave us, let's say, what we call the BTO for defining the arcs, determining the arcs, and also the BFO, determining, to a certain extent, some aspect of the attitude of the aircraft, speed, heading, and possibly vertical, but not one independently, a combination of the three. Okay, so this was used, and actually, you trace the segment between these arcs, supposing it has been in a straight line, and make sure that it crosses with the speed and the level, and the flight level, the arcs at the right time. And thus you determine a trajectory. What you have to do is to verify that they are really fully in line with the specification of Inmarsat, and it gives you the endpoint. And so why we define this area? Because it leads us there. I mean, at flight level 300, at that speed, you arrive at that. If you look at Boeing's estimation, Boeing has done a very nice document where they said, okay, we don't know the flight level, the speed of the aircraft. Let's imagine it has been a different flight level and different speeds. What will be the trajectory? And they have published a bunch of trajectory saying if it was slow, high level, or if it was slow, low flying level, and vice versa. This would be the bunch of trajectory. And you see that our trajectory is fully in line with their computations. So for us, with the average fuel consumption, it leads naturally to this because it's piloted, and because at the end, as I said, the pilot would decide not to wait the fuel exhaustion, but keep, say, 600, 500, 600 kilo for the generator in the tail of the aircraft to keep full control of the flying control surfaces, to have a proper glide. Otherwise, if it was without fuel, if it were without fuel, it would have been very difficult to glide properly. So for us, it's a gliding between 40 to 75 nautical miles away from the seventh arc. And for us, the seventh arc is not um, at the foot, and let's say the crash site is not at the foot of the seventh arc, because for us, the seventh arc is actually after a power break. And a power break means a reboot of the SDU, which is not provoked by necessarily the APU, but by a power break, saying, I have two generators working together and they have to synchronize. And so I have to stop, synchronize, and restart the systems.
Hmm.
I'm very
For a
technical. Very technical, sorry.
No, no, it's okay. And I want to explain, I want to let our audience know arc 7 or the seventh arc, it is actually the final ring or limit of the plane's fuel range where the last satellite ping occurred. So since we are using a lot of technical words, I'm trying to make sure that people who are not familiar with technical words, they can understand,
Yeah.
Okay. Now, for a lay audience, can you explain what is the WSPR technology and how it has been integrated into your 2026 model to detect a plane that had its transponder off?
Be careful. First, I'm not a specialist of the whisper technology. This technology comes, and Richard Godfrey would be better to discuss about that. But this technology is just a signal used to verify that a transmitter and a receiver in amateur uh, voice communication is well received and works well. And that's a Nobel Prize physicist, not physicist, doctor in physics, that invented this. So it's a very low signal. The principle is simple. If an object, metallic object basically, crosses the beam, there will be reflection. And this reflection will provoke distortion of the signal and reflection, and thus it could be detected somewhere. Right. Okay. So that's the basics. And so the idea is to say MH370 should have cut some of the known whisper pair, pair exchanged. Okay. But I'm not, nothing has been proven so far. So technical paper, scientific paper as expected, and we didn't use it. We didn't use it at all. So for our study, whisper is not in our remits because we didn't need it, basically. So that's all what I could say. Now, the transponder off is not really linked to whisper. As I told you, whisper is a passive, a wave hitting a metallic and reflecting with some change of the phase and the stuff like that. But the transponder is an active system for communication. It has nothing to do with whisper.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for clarification.
Welcome. Welcome.
Okay. I want to talk about the Ocean Infinity search. So my first question is on December 31st of last year, the search vessel Armada 8605 was spotted stopping just outside your Blally Marchand zone before heading north. I have two questions regarding this. I'll go one by one. My first question is, what are your thoughts on this specific activity, specifically around this area?
It's difficult to say because what we see is that we have only the image and the trace and the track of the vessel on the surface. We don't know what the submarines are doing, right? So it's interesting because we are deriving conclusions, drawing conclusions from a surface vessel and not the underwater scanning systems. What was sure is that when the contract was signed, it was on the 25th of March, and they were in the middle of our search area. They had scanned on their own funds a part of it. And well, we suppose The vessel were on top of our half of our zone before. And then when the contract was signed, they finished our zone to a certain extent and no communication was given. And that's an issue today. They have prolongated and continued the search, but they didn't communicate anything. So most likely they didn't find, but you never know because you don't know whether the Malaysians, let's say the Malaysian ministry or authorities would not have stayed in the contract or placed a clause in the contract saying no communication at all. Find or not find, no communication. We will master the communication. Why? Because we know that, and you remember, in 2014, they were, let's say, overwhelmed by the communication process, and they could not master it at all. So there were contradictory statements, there were misunderstanding, the press was misunderstanding what they said, stuff like that. So I think they learned, and they say now we communicate only what we want calmly. And so that's why they don't communicate at all. Secondly, we believe that this time there probably are things to be delivered. They would have agreed to evidences, not necessarily photo, but probably elements of the aircraft. So it's a much more complicated thing to perform.
My second question, second part to this question is, does this bracketing behavior suggest they have identified something of interest in your zone, or do you view it as a devastating blow to breakthrough hopes, as some recent reports have suggested?
As I said, it's very difficult to say whether they found something or not. If you believe people or you follow the opinion of people who have some experience in that field, like safety boards people, they would have a tendency to say if they don't say something, they didn't find it. But no, now we are still thinking that it's in this area. The aircraft is very close. It's not necessarily specifically on our zone because we have made some assumptions, we have made some computations, and inherently there are some errors, some approximations. Now, would it be a little bit west, east? It's possible. You don't know what the pilot did at the end. If it was manually piloted, he could have gone, in different direction at the end for the gliding. The wind might have pushed him, eastwards direction. The sun was maybe attracting him for different reasons, to better light, but also to see better the waves, the swell, for a gliding in a more satisfying condition. It's difficult to say. So we are not giving up.
That's the best scenario, never give up on hope. And once again, the families deserve to know the truth, and closure is very important. My next question on this is that, has Ocean Infinity shared how much of yours and Patrick Blally's analysis is driving their current movements, especially given their no fine, no fee 55-day window?
Like the other group, we have publicly, because we are on a free time, we are not paid, we are on a free will basis. So we have published our documentations, and we know that Ocean Infinity has used that to help shaping their proposed search areas. So if you look in our web page called Armada Tracking, you will see that on both sides of the seventh arc, there are it's not rectangular, but zones which look like rectangulars in white. These two zones have been using the different groups' suggestions, and definitely the external one is covering our zone. So that's why they started that, because it was in in a continuation of their 2018 search when they stopped. They started last year from where they did stop in 2018 and moved slowly, gradually to our zone and then
Hmm.
continuously northeast.
Hmm. Interesting. And we have also shared the if you don't mind, I'm going to share this with you, and with your permission, if we can share this with our audience as well. So this is the paper that she wrote with Captain Patrick Blally. Would you be comfortable for us to sharing this with our audience?
Yes, yes, no problem. It's a free. It's a it's a public document. And
Perfect.
so it exists also in French for your French viewers.
Oh, okay, perfect. No problem. We'll try to put both of these
No, no, it's
versions.
okay.
Okay.
It's okay.
Uh, Now, the MH370 exposed gaps in global aviation tracking. My question to you is, what lessons should the industry take from this? And are you seeing personally any positive changes in satellite monitoring or emergency protocols?
Absolutely. Since the day of the disappearance of MH370, few days later, ICAO has called for a group of analysis how to avoid such a things to happen again. And they created a group and which was, let's say, leading to an initiative called GDAS. And this initiative led to a recommendation and then a mandate to the airlines to know the position of their aircraft every 5 minutes. So now the responsibility is is on the airline's shoulders to perfectly know the position of the aircraft every 5 minutes. If something abnormal is detected, it should be every minute and less in worse cases, right? So this system has been mandated since the 1st of January 2025. It's already
Hmm.
in place. So they reacted. It took some time because it's not that simple. And since 3 years, basically, Airbus is already selling aircraft, which has a lot of, let's say, functions on board the aircraft in the computers to monitor what's going right and wrong, not as the systems is concerned, but as the behavior of the aircraft, the behavior of the crew, the behavior of the passengers, and stuff like that, such that if something abnormal is detected, there is a trigger and data is dumped to the ground, to the operational center saying, hey guys, something's going wrong there. The a diversion for the flight plan, a system. There are already emergency system like, for example, ACARS. If a
Hmm.
bus is switched off, there is already an ACARS message sent. But if something else happened, like a speed reduction, uh, something which is not a system failure, but a behavior, it's detected. So we know now that this could not happen again. Would you have questioned me or asked me the question 5 years ago? I would have told you, yes, it could still happen. But
Hmm.
today, the let's say the probability has been reduced so much that basically it could not happen again. In air traffic control and aeronautic, we have the
Hmm.
culture, the Swiss cheese culture for safety. It means safety is seen as a Swiss cheese built out of slices with holes. And
Hmm.
every time there is an accident, it's because holes have aligned themselves. So the safety culture is to say we have to turn the slices or we have to add a slice with no hole in that direction such that nothing goes through and no accident occurs.
I like the way you put that together. It's very easy to
Well,
understand.
it's
Uh,
how we explain it to people.
No, that's the best way to do it. Keep it simple so people can understand. A couple of other questions before we wrap this up. Now, let's say if the wreckage is found in your proposed area, what are the chances that the flight data recorder can still provide answers for more than a decade in deep salt water?
In any area, our area or the others, it doesn't care actually where it is. It's the depth, but at the depth, which is 4,000 meters or 4,500 meters, um, it's basically it's easy to recover them in the sense that they will be normally fully intact if they didn't were damaged, if they were not damaged during the crash. But normally they should be able to sustain the pressure, the rust, and everything. It's solid state memory. So the question is just to recover them and that they have not been damaged. But normally, if it is a what? A ditching, then the black box are in the rear and the tail. So they should not be too much damaged. And
Hmm.
they should be inside the body of the aircraft. So normally they should be. It's easy. It has been done in the past where black boxes remained in the water and been readable years after being recovered. So it should not be a difficulty. Now, what you will find in the box is interesting. For the data flight recorder, you will find everything which is available since the beginning and since before takeoff. Now, the voice recorder will only give
Hmm.
you the last 2 hours. So what you will hear is the wind noise, the engine's noise, maybe the breathing of the pilot, and the alarms. For the rest, you will not have too much and you will not know what happened at the beginning.
Hmm. Okay. Uh, Final question for you is, after almost 12 years of work, what keeps you motivated to continue on MH370, and what message, if you had any, would you share with the families of 239 people still seeking truth and closure as of today?
Well, I'm not that well placed. I'm just humble. First, for the family, saying that we hope we will find this time the body and the wreckage wherever it is. So we wish it's a successful campaign. Now, what keeps us working is, as I told you, in November, we released a report. A year and a half ago, we released another report on the data. The more, in this case, the more you dive, the more you study, the more you analyze the data, the more you discover. And the more you can be precise on some element and stay factual. Well, of course, we have to do some assumptions and on top of that, and interpretations. But the more data you reveal to a certain extent. And that's what we are looking for. We are trying to fetch the teeny bits that we didn't see before and could help because nobody has the money and the power to do what we do. It's only free, let's say, on the goodwill basis. I remember the very beginning, NTSB, sorry, people in America told me, but Jean-Luc, who is paying you to do that? And I said, no, it's on my free time. And they said, whoa. So it means that actually nobody is really ready to pay a team of scientists to do that. So really, it relies on, and that's a message also I want to pass to the family. We still continue because there are still things to unleash, to reveal.
Hmm. I want to ask you another thing is, since you brought this up, has the Malaysian authorities ever contacted you, come across your theory, and as you said, this is something you're doing on your own. Has Malaysian, Australian authorities ever contacted you who are so much heavily invested in the search of this Boeing 777?
No, in that sense that they didn't contacted us because we are not an official institution. And you know how it works in countries, huh? Like in France, where there is still an investigation because of a legal suit by the father who lost his son and wife in this disappearance. If you become an official, they have to make you an official studying group. And they don't have that mandate and they don't want necessarily who are we to be officially mandated. So, you know, it's the other way around. We are studying and we are offering. What we know is that they read our documentation, they took it
Hmm.
into account. How much? Obviously, you see, with the search, starting on our search area, they did. The facts are there. Unfortunately, for the time being, we don't have good news, but let's hope that they will find it in their search campaign. Huh? They are just at the half of what they said of the 15,000 square kilometers,
Curriculum.
and they are basically half of it.
And I mean, listen, we are already almost 3 weeks into the search. It's a 55-day search, so probably end in another 4 weeks, say mid-February. Now, let's say, what if they could not find anything? What if they could not find at 35.7 degrees south coordinate that you specifically mentioned?
Uh,
What's next? Like, how does that affect you personally by investing so much time and knowing that the theory was proven wrong? And don't take this personally, please, because I'm just
no, no,
trying to
no, no.
understand. This happened 12 years ago. The memory is fresh now with this search, and we have started at MH370, and we are getting so much love, so much engagement from people all around the world on finding MH370. So let me know, like, let us know, how do you feel if nothing happens by mid-Feb and this search is called off?
Well, by definition, it will be a big disappointment that in this global area, not necessarily ours, but at least the global area, nothing is found. Um, we could draw two conclusions. One is the aircraft is in a place difficult to be reached, so it needs
Mhm.
a better detection systems, or it is not there. If it's not there, it's somewhere else. Um, I don't think at this stage that Ocean Infinity would resume a third campaign of search. I don't think so. What will be the hope for the future is that because of the resources, underwater resources, people will map the flow. Uh, that's undoubtful that the knowledge will increase on the seabed and that somehow one day somebody will fall upon or will find the aircraft by a byproduct of a seabed mapping process. That's probably how I would see that. Now the feeling is that we have done our best. Uh, we will say it's strange because so many things and our trajectory is answering all the questions. You can disagree, no problem, but you cannot say it could not have happened as we say it, and you cannot dismiss the facts that we have put in light. So it's let's say we said okay, it's strange, we don't understand, but that's all we can say. But
Well,
I hope for the families that this time it will be found because it will be a drama if not.
yeah, I mean, listen, the feeling is the same all across the world, and especially people following this closely, like yourself, as well.
Yeah.
Uh, but I want to thank you so much for your time, for your tireless work, and for joining us today. And I want to ask our audience if they like what if they like your episode, please share. Every share helps the MH370 and Voice 370 community. Uh, we can do our best to act as a support to the families of the 239 people. And as you said, let's just stay hopeful. Let's stay positive. And once again, I'm so humbled and grateful for you accepting our invite and for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. You take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.